The emergency room lights flickered as Dr. Marcus Reed's heart pounded in his ears. In the sterile chaos of the transplant ward, his young son, Malik, lay hooked up to monitors, his life hanging by a thread. A lab technician's urgent whisper cut through the tension: the DNA test. It's not matching. In that split second, Marcus felt as if the ground had vanished beneath him. Malik's eyes fluttered open, filled with pain and confusion, while Marcus stared at the test results, an unmistakable mark of betrayal. The room, already dim with anxiety, felt colder. Somewhere in the background, a phone buzzed, a message that hinted at secrets too dark to face. With Malik's future uncertain and his own identity shattered, Marcus knew he had to uncover the truth, no matter how high the stakes. "Save my boy," Marcus murmured, his voice raw with anguish. But at what cost? This was the beginning of a story that would tear apart families, challenge loyalties, and force a man to confront betrayal from the ones he loved most. Marcus Reed, a dedicated physician with a chiseled jawline and deep-set dark brown eyes, had always prided himself on his steady hand and clear mind. Yet nothing could have prepared him for the revelation in the transplant ward. As Malik's condition worsened, Marcus ordered a routine genetic screening, assuming it was a mere formality before the life-saving liver transplant. Instead, the results spelled out a harsh truth: Malik's genetic makeup did not match his own. Shock and disbelief coursed through him as he reread the lab report, his mind racing. Across town, Simone Reed, Marcus's wife, with warm caramel skin, medium-length curly hair, and expressive dark brown eyes, sat in their quiet living room. Her full lips twitched in a mix of worry and guilt as she replayed the conversation with a hushed voice over the phone. Simone had tried to keep secrets buried, but secrets have a way of surfacing at the worst times. In the hospital corridor, Marcus paced, every step echoing the betrayal he felt. The staff whispered theories, and Marcus's inner thoughts swirled: who am I to be a father if my own blood isn't in my son? His hands trembled as he dialed the lab to confirm the results. The voice on the other end was sympathetic but firm, there was no mistake. Later that evening, as dusk crept over the city, Marcus sat alone in his office, the sterile smell of antiseptic mingling with his bitter thoughts. With Malik's transplant on the line, every minute counted, and the revelation added a weight he could hardly bear. He began questioning everything: his marriage, his identity, and the very foundation of his family. A text message arrived from an unknown number: "The truth is deeper than you think. Look where it all began." Marcus's heart skipped a beat as he stared at the message, realizing that the mystery behind Malik's true origin was just beginning to unravel. "I must find the answers," he vowed, gripping the phone tightly as the screen faded to black, leaving him teetering on the edge of a decision that would change everything. Marcus woke early the next morning, his mind haunted by last night's discovery. The hospital corridors were quiet as he reviewed Malik's case files again, the cold, impersonal data clashing with his raw emotions. Each medical note now felt like a betrayal, a reminder that his son, the boy he had raised with love, was not biologically his. At breakfast, Simone tried to meet his gaze. Her normally confident expression was marred by regret. "Marcus, we need to talk," she said softly, her voice wavering as she tucked a stray curl behind her ear. Her dark brown eyes, usually so reassuring, were shadowed with worry. Marcus's stomach churned, but he forced a nod. After breakfast, Marcus arranged a private meeting with the lab director to re-examine the genetic report. The lab director confirmed, once more, that Malik's DNA did not match. "I'm sorry, doctor," she said, her tone professional yet compassionate. "The results are clear." Outside, rain began to patter against the window, echoing the steady drip of uncertainty in Marcus's heart. On the drive home, his thoughts swirled with questions: who is Malik's real father? How did I miss the signs? Each mile took him further from the normalcy he once knew. That evening, Simone's phone buzzed again, but this time she hesitated before answering. Marcus noticed her anxious glances at the device and pressed, "Who's calling, Simone?" She stammered, "It's just someone from work." But her eyes darted away, betraying her lie. Marcus's suspicion grew as he recalled the mysterious text from last night. Was Simone hiding something more? At home, the tension was palpable. Marcus's mind kept replaying the lab report and the text message. Simone, sitting by the window in the soft glow of a table lamp, whispered, "I never meant for this to happen." Her voice cracked with a mix of sorrow and fear, hinting at a secret far bigger than Marcus could have imagined. The day ended with the unresolved question echoing in the silent rooms: what was Simone hiding? And as Marcus stared at Malik's sleeping form, he felt the weight of the unknown press down on him. Marcus's world had turned upside down. With Malik's transplant day fast approaching, he found himself entangled in a web of secrets and lies. That morning, while preparing for his shift at the hospital, Marcus received an anonymous envelope at work. Inside was a faded photograph of a younger Simone laughing with a man whose face was partly hidden in shadow. The note on the back read simply, "Remember who he is." Haunted by the image, Marcus couldn't shake the thought that his wife's past held the key to Malik's true identity. Determined to find answers, he confronted Simone after his shift. "Simone, who is this man?" he asked, holding up the photograph. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, silence reigned between them. Finally, she spoke in a low voice, "Marcus, I can't tell you." "Not yet." Her warm caramel skin seemed to pale as the weight of the secret bore down on her. That night, while Marcus tried to sleep in the hospital's on-call room, he replayed every conversation, every laugh, every lie. The anonymous envelope and the mysterious photograph nodded him. "I must know the truth," he thought. The hospital phone rang at 2 a.m. Marcus answered, and a distorted voice said, "Look into the past, Marcus. You might find what you're looking for." The call ended abruptly, leaving Marcus more unsettled than before. The next day, while reviewing Malik's medical chart, Marcus noted that the liver donor match had been confirmed from an unexpected source, a man whose identity was concealed. The donor's details were sparse, but one fact stood out: the donor was an active volunteer in the hospital's community outreach program. Marcus's pulse quickened. Could the donor be connected to Simone's hidden past? The possibility sent chills down his spine. He spent the day scouring the hospital records, determined to uncover any link between the donor and the mysterious man in the photograph. Simone, aware of Marcus's suspicions, tried to keep a facade of normalcy at home, but her eyes flickered with anxiety whenever his gaze met hers. Their conversations turned terse, and unspoken accusations hovered in the air. In the quiet of the night, as rain drummed steadily on the roof, Marcus finally decided he would confront the hospital's volunteer coordinator. If the donor was connected to the man in Simone's past, Marcus needed to know everything. Marcus's heart raced as he sat in the volunteer coordinator's modest office. The coordinator, Mr. Ellis, a kind yet reserved man, appeared anxious as Marcus laid out his concerns. "I know you're busy, but I need to ask about the volunteer who matched Malik's donor. His name is Daryl?" Marcus's voice trembled slightly as he spoke the name. Mr. Ellis hesitated, then sighed deeply. "Yes, Daryl Johnson. He's been volunteering here for a few years. But I must warn you, Doctor, there's something unusual about his involvement." Marcus leaned forward. "Unusual? How so?" Mr. Ellis lowered his voice. "Daryl has a history with one of our patients, a secret that's been kept hidden for years. I'm not sure if you're aware, but Daryl is known to be connected to Simone Reed." The word struck Marcus like a physical blow. Simone, the woman he'd loved, trusted, and built a family with, had ties to Daryl Johnson? He stared, unable to believe it. Mr. Ellis continued, "I don't want to overstep, but some say that Daryl might be the father of a child he never publicly acknowledged." Marcus's mind whirled with confusion. Could it be? He recalled the lab report, the anonymous texts, and the photograph. Slowly, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. His worst fears were becoming reality. Malik, the child he had raised as his own, might actually be the son of Daryl Johnson, Simone's secret lover. Before he could demand more, the office door creaked open. Simone entered, her expression a mixture of sorrow and resignation. "Marcus, I knew this day would come," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you." Marcus stood abruptly, his emotions a maelstrom of betrayal and anguish. "So it's true, isn't it? Malik isn't my son, he's Daryl's?" His voice broke as he demanded, "How could you keep this from me?" Simone's eyes welled with tears, and she reached out, pleading silently for understanding. "It was complicated, Marcus. I thought I was doing the right thing, protecting our family." At that moment, The volunteer coordinator cleared his throat, urging silence as the gravity of the revelation settled in the room. The truth was undeniable, and the stakes were higher than ever before. Marcus's mind reeled. His son, in desperate need of a liver transplant, was now entangled in a scandal that cut to the core of his identity. The realization was almost too much to bear. Marcus stormed out of the hospital, his mind reeling with betrayal and grief. The chill of the autumn air did little to soothe his burning anger. Every step he took was heavy with the weight of the revelation. His phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number: "You have questions? Meet me at the old park." Simone's eyes pleaded for forgiveness as she hurried to catch up with him on the sidewalk. "Marcus, please. Let's talk this through." But Marcus's voice was sharp and cold. "Talk? How can I talk when you've hidden the truth from me? Malik's life is at risk, and you kept his real identity a secret." Simone's gaze dropped, her warm caramel skin seeming to lose its glow in the dim streetlight. "I did it for him, for us," she whispered. The memory of Malik's fragile face in the hospital haunted him, pushing him forward into the night. Marcus drove to the old park, a place where he hoped to confront the unknown sender of the texts. The park was deserted, shadows dancing between ancient trees. There, waiting on a worn bench, was a man with kind eyes and a gentle presence, Daryl Johnson. His appearance was unassuming, yet something in his deep-set, dark brown eyes resonated with quiet pain. Marcus's anger mingled with confusion. "Daryl," he spat, "you're the one behind all this?" Daryl sighed, his voice soft. "Marcus, I never intended for you to find out like this. I tried to remain in the background, but fate had other plans." Marcus's heart pounded. "Fate? You're Malik's father." The words felt foreign and painful on his tongue. Daryl nodded slowly. "Yes, I am. I donated a portion of my liver because I couldn't stand watching him suffer. I only wanted to save his life." The revelation was staggering. The very man Marcus had hated in his mind for betraying him was now the one who had selflessly ensured Malik's survival. Marcus's inner turmoil deepened. How could he reconcile this act of kindness with the sting of deception? Before he could speak further, his phone rang again, a video call from Malik's room at the hospital. Marcus glanced at the screen and saw Malik's small, anxious face, eyes brimming with questions he couldn't yet voice.
"Dad, I need to know who I really am," Malik's soft voice pleaded.
Marcus's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel as he realized that the conflict wasn't just between him, Simone, and Daryl, it was now entwined with his son's desperate need for identity and truth. In the sterile calm of the hospital waiting room, Marcus sat alone, his thoughts a turbulent mix of anger, confusion, and unexpected gratitude. The events of the past few days still churned in his mind, each revelation like a jagged shard of glass. Malik's call from the hospital had pierced him, a reminder that beyond the betrayal lay a child in desperate need of both physical and emotional healing. Marcus's hands trembled as he dialed Simone's number. "We need to talk, now," he said, his voice tight with suppressed fury. Simone answered hesitantly, her voice barely audible. "Marcus, I'm here."
I want to explain."
But before she could continue, the hospital intercom crackled to life, announcing Malik's transfer to the transplant unit. Marcus's heart clenched at the thought of his son in such a vulnerable state. "I have to go," he said, ending the call abruptly. At the transplant unit, the air was thick with urgency. Nurses moved briskly, their eyes filled with concern as they monitored Malik's condition. Marcus's gaze fell on Malik's small, fragile form, the boy who had become the center of a storm that was tearing their lives apart. In the midst of this chaos, Daryl arrived quietly. His expression was solemn, and his deep-set dark brown eyes held a sorrow that matched Marcus's own. "Marcus," Daryl said softly, "I know this isn't easy. I never wanted to hurt you." Marcus's voice was cold as he replied, "Save your words, Daryl. You don't get to decide what hurt me." Daryl's shoulders sagged, and he looked away, the pain evident in every line of his face. Simone appeared in the doorway, her gaze filled with remorse. "Marcus, please. Let's try to understand each other," she pleaded. "Everything I did, I thought I was protecting Malik. I never wanted to destroy our family." But Marcus's heart felt divided. The man who had raised Malik, who had been a pillar of strength and love, was now caught in the crossfire of deceit. His internal monologue roiled, How can I trust Simone again? And how can I accept Daryl, the man who betrayed us by being with her, when he also saved our son? As doctors prepared Malik for the transplant, the tension was palpable. Malik's eyes flickered open as Marcus leaned down to whisper words of comfort, but the boy's expression was troubled, a silent question hanging in the air. "Who am I, really?" Malik murmured before slipping back into unconsciousness. In that moment, Marcus felt the crushing burden of fractured loyalties. His mind raced with thoughts of family, betrayal, and the desperate need for truth. He resolved that once Malik was out of danger, he would confront Simone and Daryl together, to force the answers out in the open. After long hours of painstaking surgery, the hospital corridors whispered of both hope and dread. Marcus paced outside the transplant recovery room, replaying the events of recent days in his mind. The surgery was a success, yet the unresolved conflict weighed heavily on him. Inside the quiet recovery room, Malik slept, his face peaceful for the first time in days. Marcus took a deep breath, determined that now was the time to confront the tangled truth. He dialed Simone and Daryl simultaneously, arranging a meeting in a private room of the hospital where whispers could not be overheard. The meeting room was dimly lit, the atmosphere tense. Simone arrived first, her eyes red-rimmed with remorse, and moments later, Daryl walked in, shoulders slumped in defeat. Marcus fixed them both with a steely gaze. "We need answers," he said plainly. "Malik needs the truth." Simone's voice trembled as she began, "I never meant for any of this to happen. I made choices I thought were best for him, for our family." Daryl interjected softly, "I donated my liver to save him because I cared about the boy, even if the circumstances are painful." Marcus's anger boiled. "How could you both let me live a lie for so long? I was his father in every way except DNA. And now, I'm left to pick up the pieces." His voice cracked as he continued, "Malik needs to know who he really is, and what does that even mean?" Simone's eyes filled with tears as she confessed, "I hid the truth because I was scared. Scared of losing you, scared of breaking our family. I thought if I kept it a secret, Malik would have a normal life." "But at what cost?" Marcus demanded, his tone rising. "The truth has nearly cost my son his life. And now, Malik will learn that he owes his life to the man who betrayed us." Daryl's deep-set eyes pleaded for understanding. "Marcus, I never wanted to hurt you. I know I'm not the father you thought you had, but I did what any father would do if he could save his child." A heavy silence fell. Marcus's inner turmoil was raw. Malik's soft, troubled voice from earlier echoed in his mind, "Who am I, really?" In that moment, Malik stirred awake. His eyes met Marcus's, filled with confusion and pain. "Dad, why are you angry? Why don't you love me?" he whispered. Marcus's heart broke. "Malik, I do love you, I always have. But you need to understand the truth, even if it hurts." Simone and Daryl exchanged glances. The conflict was no longer just between them, it had consumed the family's fragile bond. The hospital room was hushed as daylight crept through the blinds. Malik lay propped up in bed, eyes wide and searching. Marcus sat beside him, holding his small hand tightly. The tension from last night's confrontation still lingered in the air like an unspoken threat. Malik's voice, barely above a whisper, broke the silence. "Dad, is it true? Am I not really your son?" Marcus's heart pounded painfully in his chest. "Malik, you are my son in every way that matters," he replied, forcing calm into his tone. "But there's a truth about your origins that we must face." Outside the room, Simone paced in the hallway, tears streaming down her warm, caramel cheeks. Her curly hair was disheveled from sleepless nights, and every step she took echoed regret. She knew that her lies had cast a long shadow over their lives. Meanwhile, Daryl sat quietly in a corner, his deep-set eyes fixed on the floor as he silently carried his own burden of guilt and sorrow. Later that morning, Marcus gathered Simone and Daryl in a quiet conference room at the hospital. "We have a choice," he said firmly. "We can continue living in secrets and lies, or we can face the truth and work towards healing." Simone's voice trembled. "I was so scared, Marcus. I thought if I kept the truth hidden, our family would stay intact." Daryl added softly, "I only wanted to save Malik. I never intended to create this pain." Marcus's eyes searched theirs. "But the pain is here now. Malik deserves to know who he is, even if it means facing betrayal." Across the table, Malik listened, his young mind struggling to piece together the conflicting stories. I'm confused, he admitted, his eyes glistening with tears. I owe my life to Daryl, but you, Dad, you're the one who raised me. How can I choose? The room fell silent as each person grappled with their emotions. Marcus knew that Malik's future would be defined by the choices made this very day. Malik, Marcus said softly, I want you to know that no matter what happens, I will always be here for you. The truth may hurt, but it will also help us heal. Simone reached out, her voice barely audible. I'm sorry, Malik. I wish I could take back the hurt I caused. Daryl nodded, his eyes full of regret. I understand if you're angry with me. I only did what I thought was right. Malik's young face twisted with emotion as he absorbed the conflicting feelings.
I need time, he whispered.
Outside, the hospital corridors buzzed with the steady rhythm of life, indifferent to the family's turmoil. Days passed in a blur of whispered conversations and restless nights. Malik's recovery was steady, yet the emotional wounds festered beneath the surface. In the quiet of the hospital garden, Marcus sat alone, lost in memories of happier times, when the family was whole, when trust was unbreakable. He remembered the day Malik was born, a day filled with hope and promise. Now, every memory was tinged with sorrow and regret. Marcus resolved that he could not let the pain continue to poison their lives. He needed answers, and he needed forgiveness, even if it meant confronting Simone and Daryl once more. Late one evening, Marcus, Simone, and Daryl gathered in the hospital's small chapel, a quiet, sacred space untouched by the chaos of everyday life. The stained glass cast soft colors on their faces as they sat in a circle. Simone, Marcus began, his voice trembling with suppressed emotion, why did you keep this from me? Why not trust our love? Simone's eyes filled with tears. I was scared, Marcus. I was scared of losing everything. I thought if I told you, it would break us. Daryl's voice was barely audible as he added, I never wanted to take your place. I only wanted to help Malik survive. Marcus closed his eyes, his inner turmoil echoing in the quiet space. And now, Malik's life is caught in the middle. I need to know, can we ever move past this betrayal? Before either Simone or Daryl could respond, the chapel door creaked open, and Malik stepped in. His small face was set in determination beyond his years. I've been listening, he said softly, his voice steady despite the storm within him. I don't want to be angry. I'm grateful for my life, but I don't want to live in a lie. The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Malik's words cut through the tension like a knife, forcing each of them to confront the depth of their mistakes. Marcus's eyes welled with tears as he knelt beside Malik. I love you, son, he whispered. No matter what, you are my child. Simone and Daryl exchanged glances, their hearts aching with remorse. Malik continued, I've made up my mind. I want to stay with you, Dad. You are the one who raised me with love, even if the truth is hard to bear. I thank you, Daryl, for saving my life, but I want my life to be with a man who never gave up on me. A hush fell over the chapel as the weight of Malik's decision sank in. Marcus felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to rebuild what had been broken. Yet, even as they embraced, the future remained uncertain. Could forgiveness truly mend the scars of betrayal? The morning sun filtered through the hospital windows, illuminating a day filled with both promise and lingering pain. Malik, now recovering steadily, sat at a small table in his room, sketching a picture of the three figures that had defined his life. Marcus entered the room, his dark brown eyes softening as he saw Malik's drawing, a symbol of hope amid turmoil. Outside, the hospital bustled with life, indifferent to the small victories and heavy burdens carried by one fractured family. In the days that followed, Marcus dedicated himself to rebuilding the bonds that had nearly been shattered. He sought counseling for the family, determined that forgiveness, though hard won, was the only way forward. Simone, humbled by the cost of her secrets, began to work on earning back the trust she had lost. Daryl, too, made peace with the painful truth, accepting that saving Malik's life had come with a price that none of them could easily bear. One crisp afternoon, as the family gathered for a quiet lunch in the hospital's garden, Malik spoke with quiet resolve, I know our past is messy, and the truth hurts, but I believe we can build something new. I choose to live with Dad, where I feel truly loved, and I'll always remember what Daryl did for me. But I can't go back to the lies. Marcus reached out, pulling Malik into a gentle embrace, his voice filled with emotion. "You are my son, in every sense that matters, and we'll get through this together." Simone's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she nodded. "I'm sorry for everything, Malik. I only ever wanted to protect you, and I see now that the truth is what you deserve." Daryl, standing a few paces away, offered a quiet apology. "I'll always be here if you need me, Malik. I never meant to hurt you." As the conversation drew to a close, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, carrying with it a sense of renewal. Those scars would remain, the family began to find a way to live with their truth. Marcus, determined and resilient, looked at the horizon and allowed himself a small measure of hope. Yet, deep in the recesses of his mind, he knew that while this chapter was closing, new challenges lay ahead. The journey of healing was only just beginning.